The redefined debt paradigm. Why sovereign debt is neutralized in an era of globalized production. For decades, economic orthodoxy has held that excessive sovereign debt inevitably leads to two dire consequences: rampant inflation and unmanageably high interest rates. This paradigm is rooted in a closed economy model where increased government spending, financed by debt monetization, overheats domestic demand, bids up prices for limited goods, and forces central banks to hike interest rates to restore stability. However, this framework is fundamentally obsolete when applied to the United States in the modern global economy. A new reality has emerged: the ability to perpetually access deep, efficient, and low cost manufacturing abroad, primarily from China, effectively severs the traditional link between debt accumulation and its classical economic punishments. Consequently, the national debt, while a large figure, ceases to be a pressing problem. The primary mechanism that disarms the threat of inflation is the continuous importation of disinflation. The traditional model assumes that pumping money into the economy creates demand that outstrips the supply capacity of domestic industries, leading to price increases. This model fails to account for the global supply chain. When U.S. fiscal or monetary policy stimulates demand, that demand is not solely met by domestic U.S. factories, it is met by the global manufacturing ecosystem. China's immense industrial base, characterized by immense scale, relentless efficiency, and competitive pricing, acts as a shock absorber for U.S. economic policy. The China price ensures that the prices of consumer goods, from electronics to apparel, remain persistently low, even as American disposable income rises. This import-driven disinflationary pressure directly counteracts any domestic inflationary impulses generated by deficit spending, making sustained consumer price inflation an unlikely outcome. Furthermore, this dynamic makes the feared debt spiral, where concerns over debt lead to higher interest rates, which in turn increase the cost of servicing the debt, equally improbable. High interest rates are typically a tool used to curb inflation. If the inflationary trigger is disabled by a constant flow of affordable imports, the fundamental rationale for the Federal Reserve to aggressively raise rates is removed. The Fed can maintain a accommodative monetary stance without fearing an inflationary breakout, thereby keeping the government's borrowing costs low. This creates a stable, self-reinforcing cycle. Low interest rates make debt servicing manageable, which sustains demand for imports, which in turn keeps inflation, and thus the need for higher rates, at bay. Critics often point to potential external shocks or geopolitical strife as a flaw in this theory. However, this argument overlooks a fundamental principle of economics: mutual self-interest. The U.S.-China trade relationship is not a one-way street. It is a deeply symbiotic economic partnership. The United States gains access to affordable goods that maintain its standard of living and suppress inflation. In return, China gains a stable, massive market that is critical for employing its massive workforce and driving its own economic growth. This creates a powerful economic incentive for both nations to maintain the stability and continuity of trade. Any significant disruption would be mutually assured economic damage, making it a strategically irrational choice for either side. The sheer economic cost of weaponizing trade ensures its continuation as a stabilizing force. In conclusion, the traditional warnings about the U.S. national debt are anchored in an economic model that no longer reflects reality. The paradigm has shifted. The advent of deeply integrated global supply chains, led by China's export-oriented economy, has fundamentally altered the consequences of sovereign debt. By providing an endless, elastic supply of low-cost goods, this system neuters the primary triggers of inflation and high interest rates. The debt, therefore, becomes a manageable accounting figure rather than an impending crisis. It is a testament to the U.S.'s privileged position within the global economic order, a position where the old rules no longer apply and where debt does not pose the existential threat it once did.